Welcome, everybody, to the latest episode of the Two Fish at the Table Poker Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Legend Ben One on PokerStars.
I'm your other host, East Coast Sam on PokerStars. Welcome to this very special Chris Moneymaker double feature. We'll be talking about two documentaries, kind of sort of, about Chris Moneymaker, as well as the Celebrity Poker Tour and our thoughts and feelings on its most recent event.
Yeah, and again, with not some major poker event happening, we're always keeping our eyes and ears open for new content that's dropped on YouTube or poker stories happening or things on PokerGo. And so this is kind of a little variety packed bag episode of our humble little podcast here. And again, to that point, we love reviewing poker documentaries, and so there are a couple out there that are on our sort of to watch list here. And Sam and I each found one, ironically, regarding the same poker player here, the infamous Chris Moneymaker, to discuss this time around. And as far as which one to discuss first, Sam, I think you provided us with a great one to start off with here. This one being Chris Moneymaker is sort of a kind of a video essay, really, about Chris Moneymaker called Poker's Greatest Tournament Run.
Yeah, so this is by a guy named Emp Lemon, who has over 1 million YouTube subscribers. This was released original on YouTube. I never really heard of this guy before. This kind of just popped up in my YouTube feed, and so I watched it. And yeah, it's called Poker's Greatest Tournament Run, which that title actually belongs to Jamie Gold in 2006, but I'm going to let that slide. And it just goes over Chris Moneymaker's 2003 main event run. Not like a whole lot to say about this one. It's mainly just kind of talking about Chris Moneymaker, putting him in the context of what poker was like in 2003. If you're not familiar with Chris, this goes over his whole life, explains his personality, explains his time on ESPN. If you are familiar with his life, which both Ben and I are, and I'm assuming most people listening to this is, there's not a whole lot of new insights here. What I really like about this documentary is the unique sort of production style of it, that it's this guy talking over clips, but also just dozens of different drawings of Chris Moneymaker and depicting him in the casino with different looks on his face. Very sort of well done little pen sketches. It also goes over his chip stack throughout, which, we always like to track, how many chips do people have. Yeah, it's pretty
Yeah,
nice.
yeah, it's very much in the tone of sort of modern YouTube video essay videos, which I do personally enjoy a lot. As YouTube and the internet has kind of taken over my TV watching habits, I find myself watching more of this sort of content in general. So it was refreshing to see something like this on YouTube. And again, this was dropped on YouTube late November. And it has about 872,000 views as of this podcast recording. And so it clearly resonated with a lot of internet poker fans and video essay lovers among our community here on YouTube. So I was happy Sam suggested this to us. And again, it just kind of breaks down step by step his journey, where his chip stack was in relation to the field, the top 10 stacks, where was he there, and kind of those big sort of like 5 or 6 big moments that we would watch on the '03 broadcast. And so again, it was a very slick, it felt like, comparing to these sort of low key documentaries that we'd watch that are definitely, classified as documentaries. This one, is lower scale, lower budget, but because it's done at the YouTube sort of category of, YouTube original content, it didn't feel cheap or feel like, this was a low quality effort, and just all around great. So it's about 34 minutes long. I'm gonna say watching it at 2x speed like we always do. So about 17 minutes, and flew by. And while there wasn't really any new information for me per se, it was still very well put together. And I love the usage of the Smash Bros. Music, and also some of these sort of cartoon caricature drawings of Moneymaker, as he's matching his own, audio over various images as part of the whole video essay concept.
Yeah, I mean, YouTube video essays have really taken off over the last few years, I've noticed. I mean, obviously kind of started back with, the angry video game nerd and kind of these sort of jokey comedic videos, but now they've really evolved into, still a little bit of humor, but the point is not to be funny, it's to be dramatic and to make points about things. And Yeah, there's some really great video essayists out there. And yeah, again, as you mentioned, this isn't like a super high budget video, but even for like the standards of a low budget video, like it's pretty good. I mean, the production, the sound quality isn't off, the music is good, the drawings are good, the insight and the writing are good. Again, if you're not familiar with the Chris Moneymaker story, like this is I would send this to somebody who didn't know who Chris Moneymaker was and say, watch this video. This is what Chris Moneymaker is about.
Yeah, and I did like there was a early in the video there was a little sort of thing that sort of showed this like line plotting luck and skill and putting
Hmm.
slots which is in a casino gambling thing up against chess and the skill, and how poker is kind of in that middle ground. And I just kind of let that visual, and it was kind of I hadn't really thought of chess as sort of the contrast to pure luck, so it was kind of cool to have uh that sort of on in front of me on the video here. And again, so it's a fun little video, and it was a good prelude into the second of two Chris Moneymaker videos that we'd be watching here. The second one being it's called a documentary, but again, these both really aren't quite documentaries per se. This is just more kind of a long interview with some editing to it.
Hmm.
It's called Moneymaker 20 Years Later. About 51 minutes of just Moneymaker talking, just pretty much nonstop. The questions are um, not really, like if he's asked questions, they're not that we don't really hear the interviewer ask the question. It's really all Moneymaker. This was dropped in July of last year, so it's been out for about 15 months. It only has 9,000 views to my surprise. I mean, I guess it's hard. It could be a tough sell to someone to watch about almost an hour of just
Hmm.
Moneymaker talking. But this was honestly maybe one of the best interviews I've seen on about a poker player in a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, kind of goes over his whole life. And when I say his whole life, I don't just mean his poker career since '03. I mean his whole life from his childhood onward, his time as an accountant, as well as a lot of his sort of struggles in college, his struggles with drinking, his struggles with online gambling and betting on sports. I mean, he really brought a level of honesty that you just don't really see in other poker media. I mean, a lot of poker interviews, it's, gee, how did you start being a poker player? And what are some of the biggest bets you've ever made? To actually hear him talk about this in detail was very nice. I mean, again, we already knew a lot of this stuff. I didn't know all the particulars about his early childhood, but yeah, I mean, I knew that he was an accountant and that he was into sports betting and all that. So yeah, I mean, it's really more of an interview, a lightly edited interview than anything else. Something that like a lot of newspapers, like the New York Times, will have podcasts of a reporter interviewing a guest. It's really more like that than a formal documentary. There's some stock footage thrown in every now and again. No ESPN clips or anything like that. But yeah, which is totally fine. It's totally fine to have a lightly edited interview. There's no problem with that. But that's really what this is. This is not a documentary.
Yeah, and it is broken into like what 10 chapters. And again, I always try to find, is there that one detail, that one anecdote in each chapter that really gets my attention or I really appreciate. And that was the case here. I felt like that the
Hmm.
chapters weren't just, oh, minute 5, minute 10, minute 15. There was some organization of how these questions were asked in the order which he answered. It's mostly, in chronological order, but there's a little bit of about that to it. And again, there's some details here that I know a lot of the big ticket items of the story, but there are a lot of these small details like Moneymaker lived in the same building as Peyton Manning growing up. I mean, that was a pretty cool detail. And then also learning about sort of his marriage, ups and downs. And he's been, he got divorced and gets married again. And it's been a back and forth of can we make this work? And it's good to hear that he's found some solid marriage ground to stand on with his family right now. And again, it's even though it's the same story we just saw in the other video and other videos about Moneymaker, it was a bit of kind of a fresh take on it because it's literally just him being so raw and so honest and so open about his ups and downs of his life.
Yeah, I mean, it's refreshing to hear that level of honesty just from if you can call Chris Moneymaker a public figure, from a public figure, generally speaking, that, he's willing to say, a lot of different things, like, his struggles with his marriages and all that. Yeah, I mean, in terms of like my favorite little anecdote, I mean, just I like him talking about Phil Hellmuth and how he spoke to Phil Hellmuth early on in the '03 main event for 15 minutes. That made him feel good. Like, I'm not just saying this to bring up Phil Hellmuth, but it made him feel good that Phil Hellmuth took time out of his day to talk to him, and that's the model that he brings forward in his poker career and in his public life. That he'll talk to people and spend time with people, make them feel at home, and I think that was a nice story.
And again, I can kind of echo the same thing when a poker player that we've interviewed for our podcast give us some of their time. We always really appreciate it, and it's always a fun time for us. And again, I had the briefest of brief interactions with Moneymaker in the 2023 main event when I saw him in the hallway while Adam was playing day two. So again, it was just kind of fun to again connect the dots to this guy that we now know pretty well. Relative to the poker community here, we really know Moneymaker probably as well, if not the most well, maybe of all the champions of the last 20 years.
Yeah, I think so.
As far as I guess my highlight, as far as my like favorite moment here, I don't know if I have one. I obviously the Helmuth story was amusing. I did thought it was interesting how he his method of settling his divorce with his first wife, how he gave up alimony and child support requirements by just giving all his current money to her and sort of cutting ties. I mean, it's unfortunate that that a marriage can fall apart and then just results in okay, go away. Here's the money, go away. But I guess it probably financially made a lot of sense given the money he made since that settlement as in his divorce, and so that financially speaking was a good move for him. And I also kind of liked the last chapter how it kind of tied between leaving Poker Stars, going to America's Card Room, even dabbling in Bitcoin briefly. And how he ultimately was able to hit that second gear in his sort of sponsorship level of his career and continued to do what he loves. So that was also fun to hear too.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it kind of just this video could function almost as a podcast, since there's not really much as far as it just being kind of an audio trick if I'm talking. So if you're driving in your car or you're waiting in the airport, you only have your iPhone or iPod or whatever, just blast it on. You can listen to it, and you'd learn a lot about this iconic poker player who again he has had a pretty good run in the last few main events in the 2020s decade. He's cashed and these are for the most part I kind of find that min cash to like that sort of second tier cash level. So again, pretty impressive. We don't see other main event champions doing that. Like even Hellmuth hasn't cashed in the main event in almost a decade. So props to Moneymaker for continuing to be someone that we can watch out for every summer.
Absolutely.
And there are other poker documentaries on our horizon that we're looking forward to watching. We watched these two because they sort of had a conjoining theme of Moneymaker. But probably the one poker event that I was got me probably more excited to watch in the most excited I've been to watching poker really maybe since Adam in 2021 in a long time was this sort of another one of those celebrity poker tournaments shown on PokerGo, where we actually had two of my favorite celebrities from one of my favorite TV shows of all time, Impractical Jokers, Brian Quinn, or Q, and Joe Gatto from Jokers playing in this tournament. And this was a welcome surprise to me. I did not expect them to be in this tournament. And it was honestly some of the best awful poker I've ever seen in my life. That's how I would describe it.
Yeah, so Ben got really excited about this event. So we're obviously roommates, as you might be able to tell. And I woke up at 1 in the morning to go use the restroom. As I'm coming out of the restroom, there's Ben right there. And he's like, Sam, Q and Joe are playing poker right now. I'm like, okay, can I go to bed, please? Yeah, I mean, this was an event that I heard vaguely of the Celebrity Poker Tour in the past, but I never actually sat down and watched an event from start to finish. I hadn't even really seen clips of it. So I had no idea what this was about. And yeah, Brian and Q and Joe are just great. Q, Sal, Joe, and Murr, the Impractical Jokers is just such a great combination of comedic forces on that show. And what I like about them is that they feel like real people. They're not obviously there's some degree of a comic persona for each of them, but they feel like real friends. They feel like real people. They get each other. They know each other. And also, I mean, Q and Joe, they're just nice guys, generally speaking. Like they're good to their fans, as far as I know. And that really is on display here in this event, that they're both at the feature table. They're chatting with everybody else at the table. They're chatting with the people on the rail. And luckily we get to see quite a lot of them. So a lot of opportunity for them to just be like nice, funny guys. Like these are the types of guys like you would want to hang out with. And that was really nice.
Yeah, and with the past iterations of the sort of celebrity poker tournament, I didn't know the majority of these sort of like influencer, maybe some athletes, sort of, maybe these like, internet celebrities slash a few athletes here and there. And so it's really kind of hard to get into that sort of event when the poker is such a bad structure. I mean, the blind structure, it feels like the blinds go up every like 10 minutes
Yep.
and they have like five big blinds from like hour two of the tournament onward. And I think there was like an add-on period in like halfway in the tournament. It wasn't mentioned by the commentators or anything, but and we don't really know what the buy-in was to this tournament. The prize pool is relatively constrained given it's a celebrities tournament, but so you have a lot of celebrities, a lot of limping. There's a lot of just substandard poker, bizarre calls, bizarre plays. I mean, I call it the best worst poker I've ever seen because I was pleased with the end result for at least for one of the jokers that we'll get to in a minute. And because when you have a horse in the race, it's hard to describe how much more you can enjoy poker when you actually care about someone playing it, like beyond just like being a passive fan. Like I know that there are some like fans of like the NFL or the MLB that they can tune into any game and enjoy it, or at least they can watch the playoffs and enjoy any game there. But I mean, if you're like a 49ers fan, you're probably not as engaged watching the Patriots play the Dolphins than if the Niners were in the game, or maybe a rival of the Niners were in the game. And so the same effect too of poker here, because I'm just like this huge mega fan of the Jokers. Again, I own the entire show on DVD. I've been there are live shows. I have the board game. I quote them all the time. Again, they're a part of me as a person, as a human being. So much like when I'm rooting for Adam in the main event, again, it's just an exponential increase in interest. And so the fact is, they were both at the TV table the whole time they were both in the tournament. It wasn't like they were only there for one, section of the coverage and they moved to the outer tables. They were there for the whole time. And so I'm just like, oh my God, how far can they go? And they both play pretty horribly. I'm not suggesting that, it's fun to watch them play good poker. In Joe's case, he just kind of folded his way out into the sort of middle, maybe like just about halfway into this. It's about a 5 hour chunk of content on PokerGo on /YouTube. That's counting the breaks for the players. While Q just kept surviving, he made this early on. He made this pretty horrendous call of like fourth pair or something, and was down to about 17,000 chips out of about 100K starting stack. And then from there, I swear I didn't count them, but he must have hit like 5 or 6 Miracle Rivers just to double up these like small stack double ups. And I just kept waiting for the two to drop because the page the money bubble was the final table of 9, and so I'm like, there's no way Q's gonna make the final table. There's just no way. And you kept seeing players on their tables bust out, and so I'm obviously getting more excited there. And then there's I guess a fairly lengthy final table bubble
Mm-hmm.
goes on, and somehow Q manages to make it. I think it was on like 6th or 7th in chips, so I'm thinking he's probably gonna be one of the first ones out. But then you have to also remember that the blind structure is so weird. Like it's not, even though it's not just that the levels are very short. It's also that the blind jumps are not your standard tournament. Like usually it goes like 1, 2, 2, 4, 3, 6, 4, 8, 5, 10, 6, 12, 8, 16, 10, 20. Here they're going from like 2, 4 to like 5, 10, and then 5, 10 to 10, 20, and then 10, 20 to like 25, 50. Like these jumps and these blinds are so extreme that these stacks get so shallow so quickly that poker becomes more about, should I fold 3/4 of my chips in the small blind so maybe I can get one more spot later in the tournament, or should I, the poker gets pretty weird with the math like that.
Yeah, the blind structure to me is my least favorite part of the whole tournament. It just was way too fast. It wasn't spelled out clearly on the broadcast either. It never had a graphic saying like this is when the blinds are going to go up or anything like that. So it was
Yeah.
very confusing. I also thought the sound mixing was terrible. I actually had a headache at multiple. I broke it up into multiple chunks because I had to get a headache because all of the talking and cross talking, the commentators over the top, talking over the players, just gave me a headache. And also, I really thought the commentary wasn't really that necessary this time. There was so much talk amongst all of the players and just jokes and banter and people talking to each other and getting to know each other. I mean, many of these people didn't know each other. That I would have just liked to have just heard that instead of hearing all this crosstalk. Another thing as well is the TV table got the overwhelming lion's share of attention. Like we're talking 70 to 80% of the broadcast was on the TV table, which is okay, but it kind of just made the outer tables feel like an afterthought. And we had the traditional go to the outer tables and it would be like, oh, what's happening over here? Oh, insert celebrity here is up against insert other celebrity here, and we don't know what the cards are. The commentators don't know either. Like there's no information being relayed to the booth, so the commentators know. So again, it just really just felt like an afterthought. Um, in terms of again the other celebrities I knew, there's obviously Joe and Q. Adrian Peterson was at the feature table for most of the time and actually was doing fairly well at first. He was catching a lot of lucky cards. He was on like a sun run for the first hour. I thought he was going to win. He just kept catching cards. But also, I think he was probably the best player out of the players that we've seen. And then Maria Ho was also in the field, which I thought was a strange choice because she's a professional poker player. So it's kind of like, having Tom Brady be on a football team with, 13 Pee Wee football players. Like, it's just kind of strange to have her out there. I mean, she is a celebrity in her own right. She's been on The Amazing Race, she's been in other stuff. But I just thought it was just kind of weird to throw her out there. It would have been fun to have Phil Hellmuth or somebody out there. Speaking of Phil Hellmuth, he was a commentator, I guess. He had like his own microphone and camera crew
An
or something.
MC.
And yeah, he was just like walking up to people and talking to them. But yeah, it was just kind of like, despite all the annoying, the bad sound mixing and the outer tables being kind of an afterthought, like the atmosphere was very nice. Like that was the best part of this. Like, yes, the poker play was terrible, but everybody was having a good time. Everybody was talking, getting to know each other, and like rooting for each other to, have sick rivers. And if somebody busted out on a 2-outer or something, there'd be, some degree of commiseration. Like there was a festive, fun atmosphere at work here that I just, I really liked, even though I didn't know who any of these people were.
Yeah, I mean, with Maria Ho, I remember there was an episode of on PokerGo. It was like her versus Tony Hawk, and you
Mhm.
kind of got the sense like, oh yeah, it's a celebrity against a poker pro. So why would you put a poker pro in a celebrity tournament? And oh, what a shocker! She pretty much crushes the whole field. I mean, Adrian Pearson was the chip leader for the tournament for the most part, while Ho was on the outer table, was like accumulating a lot of chips over there. And again, given how poorly these celebrities are playing, like I think honestly, I'm no pro, but I feel like I could have easily crushed these guys too. I mean, you have people limping these awful hands. They have like 6 big blinds. They're gonna limp like ace two, and then they're gonna fold to any raise, and then just hope that it gets checked pre-flop. And I mean, you could win so many free chips just by maybe two betting a margin queen 7 plus pre-flop and probably taking down all those chips there. And so I wasn't shocked that as the final table was going on, that Maria Ho was maintaining her chip lead and playing the big stack bully with a lot of players trying to ladder up and earn some pay jumps here and there. Speaking to your Helmuth situation there, there was a point where he actually just sits next to Q and talks to him about jokers, and I was like, oh my god, my favorite poker player is talking to one of my favorite comedians about my favorite TV show. Like it's pretty crazy how that worked out. And again, it's just one of those shows that it's not going to win any awards, or it doesn't accumulate big ratings. It's been on for a long time now, so even at its peak it was only so popular. But it's just one of those shows I think that most people can just sit down and watch at any time and enjoy it, because it's a show meant to give the world laughs, and the jokers are great guys. Obviously there's some controversy here and there, maybe about Joe here and there, but I think otherwise these four guys are pretty low key, like the cable comedian champions of America on television. And so to have Helmuth, the poker champion, with the TV champion was pretty cool. As far as the poker action, again, I know that Q is not, going to win this thing most likely, even as players get busted out one by one. We're seeing some pretty crazy runouts, some bad luck, some small all-ins, some small double ups, and so by the good graces of the poker gods, somehow Q makes it to three-handed with Maria Ho and one other player at the table. Q is hopelessly behind. I think he's got like maybe like 1/6, maybe even 1/10 of the chip stack of the player in second place. And so I'm like, okay, Q, great job. Third place out of this field of, I forget how big it was, but it was under 100 though. Very impressive stuff. I'm very proud of you, Q, as a TV fan of you. And then all of a sudden, this massive hand happens where Maria Ho, with her big chip stack, is trying to just get some folds and win the blind. I think Q was probably was like big blind, and she was just going to raise like any two cards and still down the blinds there. And Maria Ho ends up getting snapped by this other player who I think has like ace king, and
Mhm.
Maria Ho has two undercards that are alive at least. And Maria Ho actually, with only 3% equity to win the hand after the flop, goes runner after her opponent flops a straight to make a full house to knock out this opponent. And somehow Q is in heads up with Maria Ho, the two players I know besides Joe once he knocked out, the two players I know the best. And that was pretty crazy.
Yeah, except she had 20 times the chips that he had. So, yeah, he goes, it's only two hands of heads up action, but it was fun at least. It was, the novelty of seeing Q and Maria Ho just heads up for this was just funny. It's also, I'm not sure if Q knew who Maria Ho was. That was kind of funny too, or if Maria Ho knew who Q was. But as I mentioned, like Q is just a super nice guy, and after the river card hit and Q busted, he immediately took the tournament was it like belt or something, and gave it to Maria Ho and congratulated her, which I thought was a really nice gesture. Like that was a sweet moment.
Yeah, and earlier during the final table, Q had mentioned that he was going to get donate all the money that he won in that tournament to, I think, like some sort of cat fund, like a cat charity for New York or something like
Hmm.
that. And so Maria Ho was kind of like, "Oh wow, now I kind of have to kind of, I feel bad if I beat you, and then the money goes to me instead of to this charity." So she, would also contribute some of that money to the same charity. And so again, it was just kind of fun to have them come together like that and have a little show. And again, Q wins the first hand of heads up play. He doubles up to at least make it seem like if he wins one more hand, then maybe there's a little bit of poker there to be played. But nonetheless, still pretty cool that again Q and Maria Ho were the final two. And again, I was just so enthused to find something that I was just 10 out of 10 fully invested in the outcome of after some poker over the last couple of years, and maybe I was a bit more indifferent to horses not making it to the end of the race, busting in funny ways or just maybe some substandard poker content on PokerGo. It's just good to have something that I can sit down, enjoy, and just be really amped about.
Yeah, if you tap into the novelty of it, if you're just, I don't care about good poker play, I just want to see something fun. This is fun to watch. This was fun to watch. Just, maybe watch it at 1x speed, break it into a couple chunks, don't wear headphones, just have some Tylenol on standby.
Yeah. And so a couple other things that happened in the poker world. High Stakes Duel 5 with
Mhm.
Patrick Antonius and Jared Blesnik in 3 rounds, one, two, three, in a relatively quick succession, unlike, past High Stakes Duel where there was a bit more of a gap between the matches. These all came out maybe like once a week. It was relatively quick. Antonius was no match, I guess, for Blesnik. Blesnik takes on all 3 matches. Again, they were doing that variant of alternating PLO with no limit hold'em. And I didn't watch the all 3 matches all the way through. I would just watch bits and pieces, and I did watch the final hand of match 3 where Blesnik is like, I have wrecked you so hard you can run it once or twice. The rule where you can run it once or twice. Which is so hard you can pick once or twice. And it's funny because one of the hands that he was like trying to brag about, he actually had the best hand that he was bluffing with. So it was just kind of funny, kind of undid his own little brag there. But again, with these two guys, I mean, I'm familiar with them. We know Blesnik from the 2016 main event where he ran, in the final 2 tables. And Tonus has been in the mix for the last 20 years here and there. It's just again, I feel like the mentality of Helmuth versus the world was just so strong, and High Stakes still just hasn't quite captured the same magic ever since. That's been my problem with it.
Yeah, you need to have somebody that the audience wants to root against, I think. So you need to have like Tony G or somebody. Like I'm not you just go get Tony G. I don't know what he's up to and have him be like him against the world. He's sort of playing the heel against other people. I think that would be kind of fun to watch. Yeah, I mean, Blesnik and Patrick Antonius are both pretty solid players. They're not super A-list poker stars, but they're both very good players. I didn't see any of this, so I can't really comment on what happened, but it's kind of a shame that it was 3-0. It would have been nice if there had been, if they tied it up and then on to the third round, we could have seen some fireworks there, but
Yeah, and again with Blesnik, I really dug. He was briefly in the commentary booth during the main event. I mean, during the World Series. I think during Negreanu's Poker Player Championship win. And so I think he's got a very good analytical mind, and I think that I'd love to see him in the booth in the future. See how if he can handle maybe commentating one game versus a mixed game. See how if he can keep things fresh for hours upon hours in the booth. And again, he's a very talented player. I feel like he's kind of been one of those sort of silent rising. I mean, he was a star before, but he's been, in these big spots in the spotlight the last couple of years, a bit more than he had been prior. So, I definitely think we could see more of him. I'd love to see him against Helmuth, honestly. That could be cool. If you take the champions of the earlier high stakes duel series and match them together, maybe that could be kind of cool. Because I mean, Helmuth has played Negreanu, he has played Esfandiari, but maybe have Helmuth play against Blesnik or Negreanu play against Blesnik, or just sort of do like a high stakes all stars of sorts. Just maybe
that'd be cool.
maybe add something different to it. Because right now, I don't know what the numbers for high stakes duel if the numbers have dropped for the viewership. I know that Virgo's got to mix stuff anyway, so either way, we'll see. But again, I kind of I've again my interest has gone down of every iteration of high stakes duel ever since Helmuth left. So we'll see if they can improve things.
Hmm.
Otherwise, there was some, I guess, predicted rule changes for the World Series as we approach the World Series of Poker in Paradise, 2.0 after last year was considered a success. Banning coaching, like live coaching during events, banning technology, banning cell phones at the table. So pretty much, unambiguous rule changes to sort of prevent any future controversies. Sam, what are your thoughts on this?
I wonder why they did those bans, huh? Like, what could have possibly triggered that? The main event had no controversies whatsoever. Um, I mean, cell phones at the table, I think that's pretty straightforward. I mean, most people are just texting or sending an email to somebody, but you don't know, right? They could be checking notes, they could be doing something else. Live coaching at the rail, I mean, we all saw what happened heads up for the main event. I understand why they would want to implement that rule. Um, I mean, there's obviously only so much you can do about that, right? I mean, you could just get coaching help on breaks. If you're going to have commercial breaks or whatever during a tournament, you could just go during then and get advice. But yeah, I mean, I think it's fine. Obviously, again, as the tournament organizers have the right to do whatever they want to do, I don't think anyone's going to really complain about this. I don't want to go so far as to say Jonathan Tamayo isn't the real champion and Jordan Griff is the real champion. I don't want to go as far as to say that. But I understand that was a controversy, and you want to move on past that.
Yeah, I say again, no one's forcing a player to play the World Series. If you don't like the rules, don't play it. Other tournaments probably, will maybe have different variations of these same rules, so that could be an avenue. And again, we've learned that there are other concurrent events happening during the World Series, so you could still be in Vegas for the main event, but then for other events, maybe go elsewhere. So it's not like you're, forced into one set of rules. And the only other thing I noticed on our my Twitter, which I run for the podcast, I had upwards of almost 200 bot followers, and over the last 24 hours, it's back down to zero. So I guess we have no true followers on Twitter, Sam. I guess we'll have to just earn them the hard way.
Yeah, I've spoken about this before that I had a Twitter account when I was like 14 and I had just bot followers. So one day I sent a tweet saying, everybody who follows me, respond to this tweet. None of them did, so I deleted my account. Yeah, X and Twitter just are so many bots and so much stuff. I've stopped using social media basically. Like I'm no longer on Reddit. I'm really not using Facebook anymore. It's because that's one of the reasons why I just can't deal with stuff like that.
Yeah. And something we didn't mention in our last podcast, that was our 100th video for the channel. So that's very exciting to have hit 100 videos. Obviously, episode 100 was a bit more of a milestone for me, but we've had a few sort of small videos here and there. So we have 100 so far. Here's to some more in the future. And I think the only other thing I wanted to mention was the potential of Menace's documentary coming out pretty soon. I think he mentioned on his mouthpiece that it'll be coming out pretty soon in December. So we'll be reviewing that, and that'll be pretty cool.
Yeah, so I did get an email from the Mind Sport Olympiad. So the Grand Prix is going to start on the 24th of January. That's a Friday, and it will run until Sunday, February 23rd. So they're doing what they've done the last several times, and they're having how do I want to describe this? Premier events. So these
Yes.
are, if you compete well in these premier events, you get a special prize essentially. And so there's two poker tournaments going to be in these premier events. That's Texas Hold'em. That's going to be on the 25th of January. That's a Saturday. And then Omaha High Low. That's going to be on Thursday, February 13th. The full schedule is apparently going to be released before Christmas. And it looks like they're going to have around 60 events. So that's
Cool.
pretty cool. There'll be other poker events. So again,
Yes.
they're just the premier tournaments. There'll be the full schedule and there are other poker tournaments. And then obviously I think they'll still have like, a poker champion, generally speaking. And then they've also announced they're going to have backgammon, they're going to have Othello, Castles of Burgundy, Ticket to Ride, Brazilian Draughts, all sorts of different games. So if
Cool.
you're not interested in poker and you want to play something else, you can go ahead and do that. Keep in mind this is on a European time scale. So I think it starts at like 7 p.m. over in England. And so that would be 2 p.m. over here, something like that.
Great. Yeah, but looking forward to it. Hopefully they'll play a lot of the events.
Mhm.
And again, so there's a few things in the works for December and January. So I'm looking forward to more fun podcasts, a few same as we near 100 episodes. And I guess for now, guys, again, it's another kind of a mini episode for now, but we'll have longer content coming up in the future for sure. So until next time, guys, enjoy your poker, enjoy your TV, enjoy your poker on TV.
Take care.